Yeah, I wanted to make a comment. As many of the people in the audience know, because you've heard about this before in the past, and I think even Martin heard of it before, the first thing we did in the Brand Israel program is we turned to the Israelis. And we conducted 2 very comprehensive, in-depth studies in Israel, trying to understand what's Israel's own self-perception. And you'll be surprised, but Israelis see themselves, in the first place, as modern, creative, friendly, and they do not put the conflict as number one, as you may suggest, Martin. We conducted research twice, 2007 and 2008, huge studies in Israel first. That's the first thing I wanted to say to Martin's comment about the need to turn to the Israelis. The second thing, when you brand a place, you have to present a very basic and simple truth, and I agree with that. I agree with Martin on that. For example, the city of Tel Aviv has a very solid brand. It's called the city that never stops, and it stems from an organic strategy. Non-stop is the strategy of Tel Aviv. It's organic, it's holistic, it's natural. It was not designed by a specific one human being. Now, most Tel Avivians, and certainly Israelis, that are familiar with Tel Aviv will tell you Tel Aviv is indeed the city that never stops. It is not necessarily positive, but it is. Because in Tel Aviv, everything is non-stop, including traffic jam and parking tickets. Everything in Tel Aviv is non-stop, but non-stop is the identity of the place, and that's why people can relate to it. So we're trying to do the same thing with Israel without shying away from the conflict. However, you have to be able to generate attraction. When you're branding places, the most important thing, you have 2 words that are the key words. One is personality, and the other is attraction. If you're unable to generate attraction, you're in the wrong business. And to Eyal's question, what is the purpose of branding Israel? We're looking at the case of Spain, for example, or the case of New York, or the case of Las Vegas. Usually when places brand themselves, they're looking to enhance their performance in one very narrow aspect of the brand. Most cases, it's tourism or foreign investment. In the case of Spain, they did what's called holistic nation branding across the board. Tourism, foreign investment, exposure of culture, the performance of leading Spanish brands worldwide. This is our goal, to improve Israel's performance across the board.
How do we do that?
You do that by creating something that is authentic, perceived as attractive and authentic by both Israelis and non-Israelis, which is what we did. You identify Israel's relative advantages. Right now, the only thing that we do, we celebrate Israel's disadvantages. We believe that it is possible.
Let me stop it. I have a concrete question. Are we buying ads in the world press?
No, this is not about advertising.
Sending sand to the Central Park in New York?
The key, well, there are 2 elements. Within the realm of crisis management, our suggestion is what Eyal just suggested, is to improve the way we manage the conflict, and the way to do it is by establishing a rapid response team that will be able to run a campaign to improve the way we react and take a proactive approach. There has to be a research component. I know that some work is being done in New York right now by the Jewish community to establish such a mechanism, and I think that's essential to improve the way we manage the crisis. However, you need an overarching strategic arm as well that will celebrate mostly below the line. It's not about advertising. It is about identifying Israel's relative advantages, niche markets, and then use the internet to push your products. A product can be a place, like the Dead Sea, or can be a human being, like, let's say, Asaf Avidan, the Israeli musician. A niche market is not necessarily a place. It can be a concept. It can be a movement, an organization, a human being that you promote using the internet, and by that, you create a holistic personality of a place. You're making, let me give you one example before I finish. I'm sure you've heard of Yossi Leshem. Yossi Leshem of Tel Aviv University is a perfect example of what we're talking about. Here's a guy who created his own niche markets. It's about bird migration and air safety. He has hundreds of thousands of people he communicates with. He couldn't care less about their position vis-a-vis the conflict. His audience cares about Israel, is able to relate to Israel because Israel is relevant to their lives. We can do the same thing in 1,500 different areas, thus improving Israel's performance and definitely creating a much more viable economy to the state of Israel.
Thank you very much.
I wanted to shift the discussion to a point that was not discussed before. There are effective agents out there that prove the point beyond Startup Nation, the book. For example, today Israel's #1 branding agent, and forgive me for using the word branding, is Birthright Israel. Birthright Israel is a program that is all about creating and restoring relevance. Birthright, the overwhelming majority of Birthright graduates report that the visit to Israel was a life-changing event. I've been to many places all over the world. I never said about a place it was a life-changing event. Israel is that powerful of a brand that the overwhelming majority of Birthright visitors say, this visit changed my life. And by the way, we can say whatever we want about Tel Aviv and be critical of Tel Aviv, but Tel Aviv is emerging as Israel's #1 beacon sub-brand. It used to be the IDF, it's now becoming Tel Aviv. And we have to recognize that. And again, as a nation, we have to celebrate that collectively and not to shy away from it.